The far-right AfD currently has the highest approval rating in Germany. Its leader reportedly wants the United States out of Germany and seeks closer ties with Russia. Let's examine this issue today. First of all, recently, the AfD leader Alice Weidel said in an interview with Reuters that Germany should join hands with Russia to revitalize its economy, which is currently in a recession. She specifically said Germany should end its boycott of Russian oil and gas. Alice Weidel, AfD leader, argued cheap energy is vital for German manufacturing and must be secured. She also said this energy loss has set us back years. Hundreds of thousands of jobs are gone. Now we're dependent on the United States, which sells us energy at much higher prices. That's what she said. Since the war in Ukraine escalated, Germany has strongly supported international sanctions against Russia. Until 2022, before the sanctions fully began, Russia was responsible for more than a third of Germany's total crude oil imports and supplied over half of its natural gas imports, making it a key energy supplier. For a long time, Germany stabilized and actively imported cheap energy from Russia, processed it, and used it as a foundation to produce high-quality industrial goods, which it exported around the world, maintaining its status as a global manufacturing powerhouse. However, with the implementation of strong sanctions against Russia, this virtuous economic cycle was completely broken. When energy imports were cut off, production costs rose sharply, and the very foundation of German manufacturing, which operated on cheap energy, was shaken to its core. The sudden surge in energy prices directly increased production costs for companies, pushing the entire German economy into a serious state of stagnation and recession. As factory output dropped and corporate profits fell, the economic impact rapidly affected the labor market. Large-scale restructuring is happening across industries, and even Volkswagen, Germany's top car maker, faces a serious situation considering laying off up to 100,000 employees because of a management crisis. But that's when AfD started to really dig into this issue. They began to approach it with a very simple logic, saying that these economic difficulties could be solved by joining hands with Russia. As a result, AfD established a strong base to grow its political influence. The ruling coalition, led by Chancellor Friedrich Merz, the Christian Democratic Union, and the Christian Social Union, is struggling as it loses public support. And in that gap, AfD is securing popular support and firmly establishing itself as the influential second-largest party. The results of a recent public opinion poll conducted by the Institute for Personnel Sociology at the request of the Baltic Times clearly show this seismic shift in the political landscape. The CDU and CSU alliance, made up of the Christian Democratic Union and Christian Social Union, had a 25% approval rating, down 1 point from the previous survey. The AfD has held a steady 26% approval rating for months, outpacing the coalition government. The Social Democratic Party is a core party in the coalition, with 16% approval, while the Green Party and Left Party have 11% and 10% respectively. Additionally, as party approval ratings fluctuate, public sentiment toward Chancellor Friedrich Merz is quickly declining. 67% of respondents in the survey said they were dissatisfied with Chancellor Merz's way of running the government, which is an increase of 5 percentage points compared to the survey conducted 2 weeks ago. 10% of respondents withheld judgment or had no opinion, while just 23% were satisfied with the Chancellor's performance, down 5 points from 2 weeks ago. Both the Chancellor and the entire German government are viewed very negatively by the public. The percentage of people who are dissatisfied with the overall administration of the current German government has increased by 2 percentage points to 68% compared to before. Only 22% of respondents were satisfied with the government's administration, down 3 points, indicating serious distrust and hostility toward the ruling coalition among German voters. The idea of the AfD coming to power was once unlikely, but now it's becoming a real possibility. A very radical aspect of the policies proposed by the Alternative for Germany, or AfD, is that they are strongly demanding the withdrawal of US troops stationed in Germany. According to a report by the Miami Herald, Tino Kruppala, the co-leader of the AfD, officially stated at an East German party meeting that Germany should begin by withdrawing US troops stationed in the country and move away from its traditional dependence on the US to establish an independent diplomatic course. The AfD is pursuing a pro-Russian energy policy while also insisting that US military forces should be removed from German territory. Currently, there are about 40,000 US troops stationed on German soil, which accounts for nearly half of all US military personnel deployed throughout Europe. Ramstein Air Base in Germany is a major hub for NATO's air operations and air defense, and also supports key military missions in the Middle East. Co-leader Kruppala pointed out that Germany should not be unwillingly drawn into other countries' international disputes, and called for the complete withdrawal of foreign troops from Germany, as well as the removal of deployed nuclear weapons. He emphasized that such strong measures are the true starting point for Germany to free itself from external pressure and secure its own political autonomy. Along with this, Kruppala directly mentioned the actual case where Spain proposed allowing US military aircraft to pass through its airspace. He noted that, similar to Spain, European countries are increasingly distancing themselves from US-led military actions. He went on to emphasize once again that Europe must break away from the existing security framework dependent on the United States and independently establish its own security strategy on the continent. From the perspective of Russian President Putin, the phenomenon of Germany turning toward a pro-Russian stance is an event that brings enormous strategic advantages diplomatically. Germany is the largest economic powerhouse within the European Union and is the key country driving the entire manufacturing and industrial base of the European continent. If Germany, which serves as the central axis of the European Union, wavers and shifts to a pro-Russian stance, the entire framework of unified diplomatic support and sanctions against Russia maintained by EU member states will inevitably be seriously weakened. A shift in stance by Germany, this historic economic powerhouse, will ripple through other European countries' Russia policies and could undermine the EU's unified response system. For example, Hungary's pro-Russian actions have already caused various EU policies aimed at pressuring Russia to be blocked. Russia could use this situation to reduce Western economic pressure and divide Europe, shaping a more favorable international environment for itself. Even a single policy change by Germany can greatly shake Europe's political and economic unity, which means the realization of the diplomatic structure that Russia ideally desires. However, even though the AfD is recording high approval ratings, whether it can actually take power and govern Germany requires consideration from multiple angles. Currently, the mainstream political circles in Germany are strongly maintaining the so-called firewall principle, which means they will not form a coalition government with the far-right party AfD in any form. Because Germany has a parliamentary system, even if a party comes in first place in the election, if it does not secure a majority of seats, forming a coalition with other parties is essential. Since major parties like the Christian Democratic Union refuse to work with the AfD, even if the AfD gets the highest approval, major institutional barriers prevent it from forming a coalition government and ruling. However, some analysts suggest that if the AfD's approval ratings continue to rise as they are now, and public pressure increases, cracks could appear in the established party's refusal to form coalitions. If this firewall begins to break down from the stage of forming local governments or during local elections, then it cannot be completely ruled out that this change could also occur on the central political stage. Additionally, as social anxiety over immigration grows across Europe, anti-immigrant sentiment is spreading. Germany is also part of this European trend, with immigrant issues becoming major national concerns. AfD is strengthening its political position by taking advantage of voters' aversion to and anxiety about immigrants. Recent immigrant-related terrorist incidents and worsening public security in Europe are driving anti-immigrant sentiment. Violent and terrorist acts by some immigrants have made the public feel less safe and increased distrust in the government's immigration control. Additionally, the incident where many illegal Moroccan immigrants stormed the Spanish Ceuta border in North Africa shocked European voters. Tens of thousands of illegal immigrants crossing the border at once made it seem like Europe's border control system was failing. AfD is highlighting these incidents and sharply criticizing the current ruling power's weak immigration policies. They want stricter border controls, tougher action on illegal immigrants, and stronger deportation policies, prioritizing national security and citizen safety. Voters unhappy with higher private costs and crime linked to immigration are responding to AfD's strict anti-immigration promises. If conflicts over immigrants persist in Europe and border management issues arise, AfD, focused on anti-immigration policies, will likely gain more support from concerned voters and see its approval ratings rise. However, despite these possibilities, it is extremely difficult in reality for AfD to secure a majority on its own or to reach an agreement with mainstream parties to form a government. This is because strong checks against far-right parties are firmly in place within the German political sphere, and there is still strong public aversion and institutional barriers.